Welcome to the Success Inspired Podcast, a business and personal development podcast to help you accomplish more in life and realize your true potential. And now, here is your host, Vid Muller.
Hello, everybody. My guest today is an ex-helicopter and airline pilot who's turned military staff officer and eventually a management consultant. He has worked with senior leaders across industries, helping them tackle tough problems. Please welcome to the show, Travis Wright.
Hey, Vid, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you today.
Hi, Travis. Yeah, great to have you on the show, mate. Great to have you on the show. Today we'll talk about obviously leadership and what you guys do at 3 Gimbals. But first, let's break the ice here with our listeners who may not know you. I know you're into writing books, taking on home projects, tinkering with 3D printing, and a variety of other bits and pieces. What's the latest home projects you've been working on?
So, and actually, hopefully I'm going to finish it up this weekend, but we have a garage, and so I've closed off half of the garage, and we've made it into a big mud room. So I have my kids help me. We put in a floor, we put in a wall and drywall and all that kind of stuff, a bunch of cabinets. And so I've got to finish up the cabinets this weekend and get those all in and hung up. And I think we'll finally be done and be somewhat organized where we have all our shoes and jackets in one place and that sort of thing. So that's the latest one.
Right. Making up a little bit extra storage for things to put in your garage. Awesome. Well, guess what? I've actually been working in my own garage too, just yesterday. Because me and partner, we've moved to a new place, and it's a double garage. And I said to my partner, nah, it's not going to be for the cars.
That's right. Yeah, there's no cars in mine either. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been putting up gym flooring and cleaning that up.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm going to turn it into a gym. And also a bit of production space for some videos and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah,
it's great to have those little hobbies, isn't it?
It is. I think the reason I really like those home projects is it's that instant gratification. It's like if you paint a wall, it's done. It may take a day or half day or whatever, but you can at the end of the day you can look back at it and say, yeah, look, I did that. And the same thing with this garage project. And I'm sure you feel the same way. You kind of see that instant change and everything, and if you're like, I accomplished something today, even if it's not completely done, at least you've made some steps toward it, and it's a really good feeling. So I do enjoy it.
Absolutely, and I mean, how important is sense of accomplishment for anybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to feel like you're doing something that matters, even when it's something simple as that project, right? When we come in the winter time and we're able to kick off our snowy, wet shoes and that sort of thing out in the garage instead of traipsing through the house and that sort of thing. It'll be like, wow, I'm glad we did this type of thing, and it leads to a little bit of a bigger purpose, which is kind of nice.
Absolutely. Now, I'm also interested in your 3D printing. What's the latest you've been printing on?
Yeah, you know what? This 3D printing, I in theory, it's all really great. I'm really still struggling with it, trying to figure it out. It's one of those areas where there's so many different settings and choices and all that sort of thing. I thought I'd be able to just download a file and hit print and give it a couple hours and it'll go. And it's not quite like that. It's there's thicknesses you have to worry about and the different materials that you use. And in fact, I had it here in my office for a while. And when you do this, it does it layer by layer, so it takes hours for it to do once you get all the settings right. So I had it here in my office, and I didn't realize how sensitive they were to temperature because it's here in the summertime here in DC, and the air conditioning was blowing on it. And just that little bit of change in temperature screwed it up. I had it to just like this big stringy mess of plastic and everything when I came back a couple hours to check on it. So definitely, learning from my failures on that. And it's a pretty steep learning curve, but it's fun. I do enjoy it.
Now, learning curves is a common thing that you write about in your book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're, and it's learning from failure too. So it's learning from mistakes. And one of the things about this is that, there's some power in actually saying, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make a mistake. None of us are perfect. Something's going to happen that we're going to screw up, and there's some power in just kind of claiming that, like, all right, yeah, I'm probably going to screw something up, not out of intentionally, of course, but you can make your own mistakes. That's kind of where the name of the book comes from, is making new mistakes, because you want to make your own mistakes. You want to make the same mistakes somebody else has made in whatever you're doing. So like in 3D printing, I'm looking at see what other people have done, figure out the setting, at least finding a starting point. Same thing with the home projects, right? At least finding a some sort of plan and whatever. Realizing that I'm going to correct some of the errors that I made, the measurements that I get wrong, and that sort of thing. But the more I can take those errors out of there, the better. And a lot of that also came from my my aviation background, because for every aircraft that I was in or ever flew, they all had a checklist, and you would have to go in and go through each of the items on there. And sometimes, unfortunately, the mistakes that other people have made have caused those items to be in the checklist because they've either damaged the aircraft or themselves or something like that, and they're kind of learning things the hard way. So it's a great way to remember, like, this is why I'm doing this check and doing it this way, doing it in this order, to make sure that I don't make those mistakes. And again, in aviation is a little bit higher stakes than in a knowledge worker, but it's still it still can be costly.
So tell me, I'm actually interested in that, because since you touched on being a pilot, what compelled you to become one?
So ever since I was 5 years old, I was like, man, I want to fly. I don't know what it is, but I just I always was fascinated with airplanes and just anything that flew. And I was really fortunate because it helped me in knowing at that young of an age what I wanted to be. I just kind of my whole high school or teenage education that I went through, it was all focused around flying. I started flying lessons when I was 15. I read every book I could find on flying. I built all these plastic models, and my bedroom had them hanging from the ceiling in my bedroom and that sort of thing. So I was just really fascinated with flying. I went to a bunch of air shows, all that sort of thing. And I think it's the challenge of the flying. It's being, it's the different perspective, when you're actually up in the air and be able to look down and that sort of thing. I really liked the feeling of flying and having this, it's kind of like driving I don't know if you've ride motorcycles or ridden a motorcycle. It's kind of like that same sort of feeling of the power, like you're connected to the machine type of thing. That really has kind of kept me hooked for a long time on flying. And then the challenge of, how can I get better? I want to fly, a more complex aircraft, or something a little faster or bigger, or that sort of thing, and find out what that's like and fly different places. And yeah, I just was really drawn to it. And I'll tell you a quick funny story. So when I was probably 10 or 12, I remember I was reading this book, and it's talking about, I think, fighter pilots. And it said that you could tell the hardened fighter pilots because they had crow's feet at the corners of their eyes from squinting through the windscreen and everything. So here I am, like I said, I'm like 10 or 12 years old, and I'm in the bathroom, I'm in the mirror, and I'm squinting my eyes. I'm trying to get my own crow's feet so I can look like I'm a grizzled pilot, at 10 years old. So, but that's how much I love flying. So yeah.
And so firstly you became a helicopter pilot, and then you went on a bigger plane.
Yeah, so I started off with in the Army and as a helicopter pilot, and it had a great time. I was extremely fortunate. I started very young. I graduated flight school when I just turned 19 when I graduated, and then for about 10 years I flew every aircraft that I wanted to. I flew about 5 different helicopters, all kinds of different units, and really had a wonderful time. But after about 10 years, I'm like, all right, what's next? I kind of need, what's the next thing, the next challenge, the next place I want to go, and that sort of thing. And so that maybe it's not in the Army. Let me try something else. And so I looked at the airlines they were hiring at the time. This was before 9/11, and they were hiring a lot. And so I said, well, let me, if I'm gonna make the jump, let me go now while I'm still young and I can go do it. And so I did, and I was lucky enough to be hired, and I had a great time. I flew for probably like 3 or 4 years as an airline pilot.
Yep.
But then I balanced that. So here in the States, a first-year airline pilot doesn't make a whole lot of money. We're on probation, and it's about $17,000 US my first year, which is peanuts.
That's peanuts, yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty awful. So I joined the National Guard part-time to kind of supplement my income. And so, yeah, it was great. So I got to fly helicopters and airplanes, and yeah, it was a really good time.
Is that something that, like, with the income for that, obviously talking about commercial airline pilots,
yeah.
Is that still the case? Are they still like being paid so little in the first year or that sort of stuff? Is that during the
So
probation or?
yeah, exactly. It's during probation, and I think a lot of that. I think it has changed. And again, this was like I said, it was almost 20 years ago. And there were some accidents, unfortunately, that happened. And so they said, well, look, we need to get better trained pilots. They need to have more
Mm-hmm.
hours and that sort of thing. And then obviously all bets are off now with the pandemic. But
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic, I think it was getting better when it came to that. So yeah, I hope so for sure.
Now moving from being a helicopter pilot to commercial plane, it anything like every next step comes with its own challenges, right? What's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to approach challenges? Do you have a method that you find is effective?
Yeah, so well, I guess I'll start with the aviation example, right? So it's having a framework, and I'm a big fan of mental models, and I think this comes from my aviation background because, like I said, I flew probably half a dozen different helicopters and probably half a dozen or more different airplanes, and each time I went to train on them, I I I knew that there were certain things I would have to know for each of the airplanes. So we talked about the checklist, right? So I need to at least be familiar with the checklist and the things that I'm looking at. Then there are other things where I needed to know the limitations. How fast can I fly? What are certain airspeeds when I can do different maneuvers and that sort of thing. And I needed to know the limitations of, like I said, some of the airspeed stuff, but also the type of fuel, how much, the oil pressures, and all that sort of thing, engine temperatures, all those sorts of things that I knew I would have to memorize, and I would need to know those things. Um, and then once I learned all of those things, I would need to learn the systems. And so it didn't matter which aircraft that I was flying, I would need to know those things. So as soon as I knew I was going to fly something new, I would get the manual, the instructions manual, basically the owner's manual,
Yep.
and look at it and just start memorizing, and not knowing what the numbers meant or anything like that yet, not having that correlation yet, but at least getting the numbers in my head and getting familiar with them and the procedures and that sort of thing. And the other big piece is knowing the emergency procedures. So when something goes wrong, when the engine quits, what do you do? And other things go wrong, what do you do? That sort of thing. So, having, and at the time I didn't know that was sort of a mental model, but it is, and it's at
Process
least
of
one.
learning.
Yeah, exactly. Just figure out a way to start on how to bucket these things, and taking how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and knowing where to start
Absolutely.
is the big piece of that. And so that's how I did that for flying.
I mean, it makes perfect sense because I mean, it's kind of like how our brain works as well, right? It's sort of
Yeah.
compartmentalize things and then they're sort of connected through the neural network. So I guess it makes sense if you and especially with what you were doing. I mean, it's very technical knowledge that you have to acquire, right? Like you said, understanding different fuels, different temperatures, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to sort of put them into different things. I know when I was in school, I've never really been a good learner, but for me, what worked was a different variety of methods. So I was obviously I would read the text, read the information. That typically didn't work, but I would then record myself on an audio player. So then I would listen to myself and then read as well, and then I would get to a point where I would just keep it playing in my ears just constantly. And then when I would go home, I would then start writing little notes from that, and then the next step was creating little cheat sheets, as if I was to take a little cheat sheet to the exam, right?
Yep.
But I would actually never use it. That's one thing I learned from my dad, because he decided to study university at the age of 45.
Oh,
Right? He wanted to,
wow.
yeah,
Good for him.
he
Yeah.
wanted to, yeah, absolutely. And so he wanted to catch up. And he would always do these little cheat sheets, and I'm like, oh, come on, you can do it. Like, no, I actually never use them. It's just a method of learning, because when you're creating that cheat sheet, you're limited to a small space. You can only put certain bullet points, certain keywords that'll then help you. Like if you see them, that'll help you memorize the full thing. And so by doing that, again, he was sort of just creating the system around it. So
Well, and that's both of those are great examples. If as a leader, it's figuring out what knowing yourself, most importantly, right? How you learn and how you lead, and how you convey your message to either your audience or to your team or your organization or whatever, and knowing what works for you. But then taking that one step further and like, how does my team learn? What do they need, and how are they going to accept this information? And knowing those things makes things so much easier. And sometimes you have to learn it through trial and error, unfortunately, but a lot of times you can kind of figure out, like, all right, these are a bunch of, IT people, so they're probably they'd prefer an email from me as opposed to, me coming by and talking to them and engaging them in, conversation, being stereotypical there. But things like that, right? Whatever the example is kind of finding out what their styles and how you can adapt. And really, as a leader, you need to adapt your style to, your team, to make sure your message gets across. Absolutely.
Everybody's got different learning preferences as well, and you want to be able to get that message across to the whole team, and that's ultimately what's gonna result in an effective implementation, whatever that may be. But with what you guys do, it's all about innovation, isn't it?
Yeah, 3 Gimbals.
Let's talk about that. I'm very interested. I was looking at the website. I'm like, wow. Geo intelligence, open source data, human machine integration, all those things. So keen to unpack that a little bit for our listeners and for me.
I'll do the best I can, because I'm not an analyst. I don't do those things, but I can talk about them at a really high level for sure. So, as you know, there's so much data that's out there, and leaders have to look through all of this data, regardless of what industry they're in. There's just so much coming at them. They don't even know where to start. Like 20 years ago, you're looking for a needle in a haystack when it came to data, and now you're looking for a needle in a stack of other needles, right? Make sure you find the right one, because there's no context to it all. We're definitely not suffering from a lack of data. There's so much that's out there. And so what we found is that there are ways to layer a lot of this data, we call it fusing it, in these different slices of data, using geospatial as our base, which is imagery, and then using other types of data on top of that to kind of tell this full story about what is happening, and opening up these different contexts and that sort of thing. And even before we get that far, what we're really doing is talking to the leader and saying, look, you've got all this stuff coming at you. They don't even know what questions to ask a lot of times. So we go through a process with them where we talk about, what's important, what's your mission, what are you looking for, what are you hoping to find, and that sort of thing.
And that's for any company, both public and private?
Yeah, well, so we just work with public companies in the government.
Okay.
Is what we do, and mostly in the intelligence arena. So they're looking at different areas, and again, you think there's so much coming in a business realm, in the intelligence community. There's just even more coming in to them. So just trying to make sense of all that's going on, because if you're in a business and you screwed up, well, maybe you miss out on an opportunity, and your balance sheet isn't that great at the end of the year, or that sort of thing. In the intelligence community, stakes are much higher, obviously, and so they need to get it right, just about every time. And so it's an honor to be working with them and helping them to uncover those insights and make these connections that they might be able to make in a normal situation. So it's really exciting work, and we're really focused on our people. Our analysts are really our special sauce. They're very creative thinkers and very much critical thinkers on what they look at. They're just the way that they can make these connections. I've seen them in action, and it's really amazing to see these different insights they can pull together. And it's really kind of cool the way that they can make these tools sing and make these connections. I'm like, I have no idea how you did that, but that was pretty cool. So yeah,
because we live in times where everything is so fast paced, and like you said, there is so much data, and the innovation is at such a fast pace that the next morning you wake up and there's a new thing, there's a new innovation, new software, or new whatever. And if you're running a business, you're running a company or organization, whatever that may be, you need to be able to stay relevant, stay current, and either innovate or look at disruption, and right. And but the big one with making that decision, what would be that next step, is looking at all that data and understanding the correlation, right? And that's, I think, what's really hard for a lot of people. Like, I look at all that data, I'm like, okay, well, that's all great information. Now, how can I correlate that to an actionable step?
Absolutely. And I talk in my book, I talk about that a little bit too. Is just because everybody in your industry is using blockchain. Does that mean you need to make the jump to blockchain, right? And in whatever application it is, or robotic processing automation, or whatever it is, whatever the buzzword is today, right? Do you need to necessarily make the jump towards that just because everybody else is, or just because it's the hottest thing out there? And it's really thinking about what we talked about before, right? It's what is right, what do my customers need? What does my business need? Because the right solution for what you're doing, it may not be the right solution for what my company in the very same industry in the same town is doing. It's our customers that we really need to focus on when it comes to a business, and what do they need, and how can we best serve them? And that will help drive what are those innovations that we need to focus on going forward. So, yeah.
Now the other thing is obviously also it can get chaotic, right? With so much going on. So what is a good effective method for a leader out there to navigate through the disruption with the most minimum chaos?
Yeah, so a big piece of this actually applies to just the leader that you're asking about, right? In the business sense, but it can also
like an executive, president, CEO.
Yeah, exactly. It can apply to them, but then it can also apply to someone who's just in their career in general. And what I recommend a lot of times is having an informal board of advisors. And what that is, it could be as many people or as few as, it's up to you, right? Whatever makes sense. And there's no formal board meetings or anything like that. This is just people that you reach out to. These are your go-to people. So as we said at the beginning, right, it's knowing yourself, right? Knowing your, what I call your flat spots, the places that you're weak or, you need some help in. And for me, that's the technical area, right? When we're just talking about the analyst, I don't get that, right? I don't do that. But I've got people that are super smart that I can reach out to, and I can say, hey, can you explain this to me? Or what do you think about that? I read about this. Does this make sense to you? And they'll be like, no, that's dumb. Don't do that. Or yeah, hey, maybe that is something new I haven't read about. Mm-hmm. So it's knowing yourself, and then knowing this sort of team around that can hold you accountable and inform you. So in addition to having a role like a technical expert, is having someone who is so kind of the crass word, I call it like your booger friend, right? So if you have something hanging from your nose, people will just kind of look away or maybe give you one of these or whatever. But, I have a friend who's like, dude, are you going to name that thing hanging out your nose, right? They hold you account, they're going to call you out on your BS. And and they know you, but they're doing it
straight shooters.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably a better way to say it. But yeah,
that's right.
But they're going to give you, the straight, skinny on what you're doing, but they're not doing it in a mean girl way. They're doing it in a way because they're
the problem solvers.
Exactly. So it's finding those people. So when you come up with this idea, and this happens to me quite a bit, I'll come up with this great idea. It's like, this is the best thing ever, and that sort of thing. And then I go to my friend who serves that straight shooter role for me, and she'll be like, dude, you're smoking crack. That's dumb. That's never going to work. Did you think about this, this, and this? And I'm like, all right, you're right. And maybe I can improve my idea or that sort of thing. But having someone that can kind of hold you accountable that way. And maybe having some other, you're going to have hard days too, right? So you need somebody who's going to be sort of your champion, sort of, the eternal optimist who's going to be on your side. And when you're kind of having a down day, it's like, I'm not cut out for this. There's no way I can do this sort of thing, where they're like, hey, you're doing a good job. Remember what you did last week or last month, or, you're headed in the right direction. You just need that little pick me up. And whenever I have those days, I have someone who I call and it's like, oh man, I'm having a rough day. And they'll just kind of pick me up and kind of set my perspective in the right way. And all of these roles are really just kind of keeping you focused on what's important and moving forward, so you don't get distracted by these other areas. And there could be other roles. Again, it depends on you, what you need, your style, and that sort of thing, what your different flat spots are, and that sort of thing. But that's a couple of roles to think about. And a lot of that applies to your career development sort of thing.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about it as executive and making those decisions, that sort of thing, it's thinking about those same types of roles. And it can be in your company. It doesn't have to be. It can be somebody else that you reach out to, and nobody else needs to know, right? And again, these people don't need to know that they're on your board or whatever. It's more for you to understand that. But you're reaching out to these and just getting these other opinions. It's because it seems like the higher we get up into the leadership chain, that the more people want to please us. And it's not like a they're not sucking up really. Like they want to have the right answer. They want to look good, and they want you to look good in most cases. And so it's not that they don't want to tell you, it's that they just want to tell you good news. And it's just a human reaction, right, that they want to do. So having that, it's not always a counter opinion, but just having sometimes a more informed opinion on things is helpful, I find, for a lot of leaders to, ask good questions and that sort of thing.
I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, because if you got a team and everybody is a yes man or woman, you're not going to get anywhere, because they just, it doesn't make it. It's not a true reflection of people's actual opinions. I think. I mean, with solving problems or any opinions for that matter. I mean, there's always going to be a scale, and if everybody's on that one side of that scale, it's like, well, you never get that fresh new perspective, right?
Absolutely. And I talked to a friend who said, you know what, we should have more like science fiction writers on a team that kind of think out there, that kind of stretch the thinking a little bit, right? That kind of they live in that sort of fantasy world, and that's great because just to your point, right? Everybody's kind of clustered around over here. You've got this other person kind of pulling you a little bit, where it will bring you to a place that you never would have gotten to as a team. So having a diverse team, I think is really important as well, to get the different perspectives and ideas and that sort of thing in there. It just makes you better.
But obviously that only works with an open mindset as well. So as a leader, you have to have that open mindset and take all the opinions as an opinion, not as a critique. Because I know like so easy to have that ego and just say, now I'm the big boss and this is just the way I like it. This is the way it's going to be. Because then in the end, well, if you're like that, then why are you having all those meetings for?
Right. And then people they'll stop bringing ideas and that sort of thing, and it becomes stagnant. So I think you hit on something extremely important, that it's being comfortable in yourself and knowing that you don't know things. That's fine, right? You as a leader, you have these skills that are important in making decisions and guiding the team and that sort of thing, but you can't hold it all. It's impossible. If you are, then you're a detriment to the team. You kind of get stuck in a role, and you get the team stuck and the organization stuck, and you're not doing anybody any favors. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Being open-minded, being open to those opinions. And I tell new leaders as well, I say, look, you need to delegate, because a lot of times your brand new leaders, they come in, and what got them to this leadership role is because they were really good at whatever they were doing before, whether it was coding or, running reports or whatever they were doing. They were really
sort of
good
grew
at that.
into those shoes.
Yeah. So what do we do with people like that? Well, we promote them. Now you're a manager. And a lot of times we don't give enough training and that sort of thing. So when I see them, I say, look, you need to delegate. You need to pass that off to other people. Like this work that you were doing before needs to be passed off. If they can do it, they're not going to do it exactly the way that you do it, right? Everybody has their own perspective on the way that they do stuff. The exact same form, people are going to do it in a different way. And it doesn't mean it's wrong.
They might not even do it as well as you did.
Yeah, and that's okay, right? That's okay. If they can do it, and what I tell them as a rule of thumb, I said, look, if they can do it 80% as good as you, that's great. Give it to them, right? Give them a little bit of instruction. It makes them better because they're going to grow. It makes you better as a leader because you're going to be able to guide them and say, hey, actually, this one blank that you're always leaving, that's actually really important for this reason, right? And this is why we need to make sure we do it this way or whatever. But the point is that it will make you both better, takes the load off of you. And then as leaders kind of grow into those roles, I'm like, all right, now are you training your replacement? Who's going to take your job? As a manager, who's going to take your job so you can move to the next one? Always be thinking about that. Succession planning and everything is really important too. Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense. And also finding those right people in the organization and understanding how to empower them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so having gone through doing a lot of hiring, and unfortunately having to do some firing as well, it is, you can't underestimate the human element and the skills. There's a lot of people that are like, they're never going to make it. And then they surprise me, right? And they're like, wow, I can't believe we, went this long without this person. And others, I'm like, they're going to be perfect. They're going to rock this. And then they get in the role and you're like, whoa, I screwed up. So, figuring out that human piece is always a challenge. Always a challenge.
Now, in your book, um, in your book, Making New Mistakes, you cover theory, you cover questions, you cover frameworks that are applicable to better leadership and running more effective meetings, and also best ways to approach new innovation. Are you keen to unpack that a little bit for the listeners? Anybody interested in maybe getting their hands on the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, like most people that are, like to learn, I read a lot of books, and I look at what I've found is that a lot of times there's this high overarching theory and that sort of thing. And after I get done with the book, I'm like, well, yeah, that all makes sense, but how does it apply to Travis today, right? How do I kind of put that in action? So what I wanted to do is sort of bridge that gap. Like I don't want it to be an instruction manual, right? Day one, show up, sit at your desk, that sort of thing. But I also didn't want to be, be authentic, right? Which, all right, what does that mean exactly, right? It's aspirational and all that, but I don't know exactly what that looks like when I show up to work every day. So I try to bridge that gap where there's hopefully there's a good balance of some theory to kind of stretch your thinking and stretch your mind a little bit. And then there's some practical steps on ways to, like you mentioned, to run a meeting. So, and just to share that is to have a purpose, an outcomes, an agenda for every meeting that you go into. And asking your team to put that together too for every meeting that they call for you. You'll be surprised how many meetings fall off when they're like, well, maybe I don't need to have this. I could kind of figure out myself. Once people kind of think through it a little bit, they're like, I think I could just ask this question. I don't think I need everybody, but it's being intentional about it. It's coming up with why are we meeting today? Why are we coming together to do this? What are you looking for as far as an outcome? Are you looking for a decision? Am I just letting you know what's going on? Is it just an update and that sort of thing? And then having an agenda, like this is how I'm going to give you a background, a status check of where we are on the project, what we need to do next. I need you to call Bob in accounting and get him to send us more money or whatever it is, right? So people can prepare and can know. And if you send that out early enough, what you'll find is that people say, oh, well, I'll just call Bob now, right? And they're willing, it totally makes sense. You've kept me up to date on what's going on, so I'm just going to call Bob and we'll take care of this type of thing.
That's it. No need to meet for that.
Yeah, and other times it may need, it's like, oh, yeah, accounting they've been falling behind. We need to get together and actually escalate this entire thing because other departments have been having the same issue or whatever it is, right? That you'll actually be able to bring that together. And even if you don't do it formally every time, at least if you're like, I need to have a meeting with somebody, as you're typing it out, saying, all right, why am I meeting? And then who do I need to have there? Do I need to have the entire team there, or is it just 2 or 3 different people, or that sort of thing? Like I said, it really cuts down on the number of meetings and who comes to the meetings, because nothing's worse, than sitting in a meeting that you don't need to be at and kind of wasting your time and that sort of thing, and wasting other people's time. I feel bad when I do that. So. Yeah.
I don't come from a corporate world, but I've like in my career, I've been a personal trainer for many years back in Sydney. I've trained a lot of people working in corporate world, and one thing that I always remember, they come in for a session and like, hey, how was your day? Just had a shitty day and 2 meetings, pointless. And so one thing about meetings, right? The way I understand it is obviously to solve some problems, to have some sort of an agenda, set an outcome, but is maybe a purpose of a meeting also to basically just get together? Because we're as a humans, we are herd species, right? And everybody's working their own cubicle. It doesn't really promote a team culture if everybody is secluded, right? At some point, you got to get people on a regular basis together, right? Now, whether it's meeting or a team building event, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And especially now, right, with all this pandemic stuff going on and with the rise of remote work even before the pandemic. So what we at Three Gimbals have done as a company is we're remote. We're all over the US. And so the teams don't always work together or on the same project or that sort of thing. So what we did is we put together, we call them baseball cards. So it has your picture, has, a little bit of your background, where you've worked, where you went to school, that sort of thing. What you like to do in your free time, hobbies. We ask people to put in something that people may not know about you, type of thing. Because I may never, if you're in a totally different team, that you're in Australia and I'm here in DC, and we may never work on a project together, but if I can look, it's like, why is this guy always emailing me? Who is this guy, right? I can at least go in there and say, oh, okay, well, he was a personal trainer, and here's a little bit more about his background and that sort of thing. It just puts a face with a name for people that you don't always see. But to your point, though, as far as having meetings for team building and getting together, that's another thing that we've done, especially with the advent of COVID and all that sort of thing. So on our individual teams, we'll get together. That's like every other week or so, and we'll just have a coffee, right? We'll just all sit there and just kind of, sit there with our coffee and just kind of BS on Zoom and just kind of talk and just kind of see how things are going. How are you dealing with the pandemic? You made this one sick. What did you do today? Were you able to go out? Those kinds of things. Just to get some of that camaraderie and
break that, take away that seriousness of a regular team meeting, right?
Exactly. Yes, take that pressure off, and it's just just people, just kind of talking and getting to know each other a little bit better. So yeah.
Another form of team building that I find works really well is through fitness and through an obstacle course racing. This is what I've done again with my clients in the past, and I've had bunch of guys that used to train at my boot camp, and they were in their 40s and 50s, and that's where sort of the boot camp was. The Tough Mudder was starting out. I think it was 2010, 2011. I think Tough Mudder was around for a few years, and I said to them, "Let's do it," and they're like, "Oh, no, I don't feel like doing it." But at the end, I convinced them, and we did it. And they didn't really know each other. I trained them more sort of separately, and some of them were in separate different boot camp groups. But what I found was doing that event together, and I think it was like 7-8 of us. And, you've got 20Ks running through the mud, running through all the obstacles, running through the finishing line, getting electrocuted. And then they just chuck a space blanket on you and give you a B. But one thing that was amazing was, everybody was just like, they all had like this life-changing experience that, oh, wow, I'm so glad I did it. It's like, I found this, a new level that I was able to push through. And we just had a beer, and we just standing there together, just having a giggle and, talking about, the best obstacle or what was the hardest obstacle. And it was great. Anything you guys done in the past that sort of falls into that, fitness, team building type of thing?
Yeah, well, so in the Army, of course, right? That was that was what we did a lot of, but it's really interesting too. So I had this instructor who would always say, I would come in and I would have a great landing or a great approach or whatever maneuver, and I'd be like, a little proud of myself, and he'd look over and he'd say, anybody can excel in ideal circumstances, because maybe there wasn't a lot of wind, or the conditions were just right and that sort of thing, and kind of humbled me a little bit, which was good, was what I needed. But beyond that, we remember those hard times that you're talking about. Like, you'll have a much like in the corporate world too. It's when things kind of aren't going right and they kind of suck, and you got to band together. Everybody's got to pitch in and make something happen and get it done. And then you get through it. That's what you talk about, right? That's what brings you together, is those moments. It's not when everything's going great and money's pouring in and all the clients are happy and that sort of thing. It's good to kind of rest and relax a little bit there, but it doesn't really stretch you to what you were talking about before, and really make you a stronger team and make those connections and that sort of thing. Because that's when you find out what people are really like. I'm sure you see this in your work as a personal trainer. It's like, when people are really, at their limit and, they don't feel like they can give anymore, and that sort of thing, do they give up? Do they keep trying? Right. And where is that for different people? And because I'm sure you've worked with people, you're like, I know he could do a little bit, he's sandbagging on me, I know he could do a little bit more, and that sort of thing. And others that are, they're about to puke and they're pushing, and you can tell, and it's the same thing in the corporate world. You can tell who's kind of like, all right, they're not really pulling their weight. They could do a little bit more.
Yeah. It's a tough one though, because it's a tough thing to say that to somebody, because especially the older we are, more set in our ways we are, right? And I remember this one client that I trained, and he was very set in his own way, and he was trying to achieve good results, and he would, and then he would drop off, and he was get back into sort of a lazy patch for a couple of months, and I was trying to get him to cook better, and then one day I just sort of lost it, and I said to him sort of what I thought, what he needs to really do, and just put his shit together, and then he stopped training. He stopped training for He was just like, "Oh, how rude you are! That's so disrespectful, so unprofessional." I just sort of laid it out the way it was, and that was after many tries, right?
Yeah.
And before I even did that, I questioned myself the whole time. I questioned myself, and I
Mm.
spoke to other trainers, and they said, "Nah, you just gotta pull them up on it. Sometimes it's not you, sometimes it's the client." And so yeah, he quit on me. He was very angry at me, and then yeah, just sort of dropped off for about 2 weeks, and then I got a text message. Hey, you know what? Yeah, I think you were right. I thought about it, this and that, and he came back, and then because he was sort of aware of it now, aware of these issues, aware of these setbacks that he's put himself on, we're actually able to get good results. So sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what a service you did for him, right? So as he's getting better and that sort of thing, we all, that's not uncommon, right? I know I need that sometimes. I need, the boot in the ass sometimes to get stuff done, and to be held accountable and that sort of thing. So we all need that, and it's a sign of respect and a sign of that you care about somebody, that you're willing to do that. Like if you didn't care, it's like, well, whatever, he's paying, right? Then who cares, right? That certainly could have been a perspective, but really, really caring about somebody, that that you would go out and do that, and yeah, just give them some of that tough love. I think that's really, really cool and really important in all realms.
Absolutely. I think whatever it is that you do, at some point things may may stop working, and
Mm-hmm.
you got to realize, okay, well, I need to do something different. I need to innovate the way I do things. You've got a really good story of innovation and how it can fail, right? With Kodak story.
Yeah. So when I was starting to write this book, my whole idea behind it was like, how do companies miss out on innovation, and how they make that adaptation to finding, how do they find the next big thing, and all of that. And one story that came out was the story about Kodak, and I was like, so when I would explain, I would do all these interviews with people I was interviewing for the book, and I would say, yeah, well, kind of what I'm getting at with this book is kind of like, with Kodak, when they actually invented the digital camera back in 1975, but you don't see Kodak around anymore. Like nobody has a Kodak camera. What did they do? They screwed up and that sort of thing. So I would kind of share that just as a overview of the type of book I was writing.
Mm.
And I shared that with one guy one day. He says, well, do you want to talk to the engineer who invented the digital camera? I'm like, yeah. So I got connected with Steve Sasson is his name, and he was fantastic. He shared his story with me. And just quickly, the highlights of it is that he came out of grad school. He was an electrical engineer, and
Mm-hmm.
he lived in the town where Kodak was headquartered, and their labs were and everything. And they had a lot of mechanical engineers. So they were really trying to get and again, this was in the 70s. So they're really trying to get the fine watch-like mechanisms in the cameras, trying to get those really tight and that sort of thing. So they had a lot of mechanical engineers. And he was one of the very first electrical engineers that came in. He's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So they gave him this project, and they said, hey, we're looking in this, there's this new type of storage, like a thumb drive, basically. And they said, hey, we're not sure what this does. Play around with it. And so Steve, he never really cared about film. He even said that. He says, I don't even like film. I don't know why I'm working at Kodak. But he said, you know what? I'm going to take this a little bit further. I'm going to see if I can make a camera and take a picture with no moving parts. And that's what he did. He was able to figure it all out. He had access to all these crazy tools and things like that in the Kodak factory, and he was able to make this camera that, now by today's standards, it's awful, right? It was the very first one, and he said it's like he would take a picture in the conference room of the people attending, and it would come out like the resolution of an icon. Basically, it's just very, very low resolution. It would take like a minute or 2 minutes to actually process. It would just take forever and all that. But it was just a challenge to him, to do that. So, and before talking to Steve, I was like, well, Kodak, they're dumb. They didn't realize what they had. They're just bad business people and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of shared that with Steve. And he said, well, they were asking a lot of the same questions that you're asking, right? But think about 1975, where there was no internet. When people took pictures, it was for an event. So it was a birthday, it was a wedding, it was, something special.
And then they would have a party and pass the pictures around.
Exactly. After, like, it was an event, and you only had so many that you could take. It was like 12, 24, 36, right? That you could,
I remember that
you could take. Yeah. And you wouldn't know what you got until you got it processed, type of thing. So, so there was that. And then from the business perspective, they had 3 touch points with the customer. So obviously you already had the camera, but you have to go out, buy film, go to the pharmacy, buy film. And then you go and take your pictures, take it back, get it processed, drop it off to get it processed, and then come back a third time to pick up your pictures that were developed, and then hopefully buy some more film. So from the business perspective, like, that's 3 times we get them. That's great. They're always going to buy some new accessory or something like that for their camera. So why would we change that? The company had been around for 100 years in doing cameras and wet film. So he said it was really tough for them to kind of figure that out. But again, there was no internet. And when he would show the pictures, it was on a TV screen. There weren't even projectors or things like that. So so they're asking Steve, like, all right, this is great. This is kind of cool. I can see how it could be maybe improved, but are people going to look at a picture on their TV of themselves? How is this supposed? How are they going to share it? Right? Again, there's no email or anything like that. How are they going to share it with people? How is all this going to work? And so they just weren't able to connect those different things. And it just took them a while before all those other pieces came out with the internet and the actual the technology matured and that sort of thing. So now Kodak, they sort of had that opportunity. Steve said, in 1975, we couldn't figure that out. He said maybe in the 90s there might have been another chance where they could have come in and made better cameras and those sorts of things that would be in your iPhone instead of what's in there now. It would be Kodak related. So the other smart thing they did when it came to the business side is that they patented a lot of the technology. So as they were learning in their lab and that sort of thing. So maybe it's not a whole Kodak camera that's in your phone, but there's a lot of the technology is patented, and they were able to kind of profit off of it that way. But as a company, they're a shell of what they used to be. They're mostly in the commercial market, still doing wet film and that sort of stuff, but much smaller than they used to be, and kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I like about what they did is they were selling a certain experience. I know when I was a kid, and like you said, that you're going, you got those limited 24 photos that you take on your camera, and then you go and you put photos to get made, and then you get the whole family together. And so they were essentially providing that experience, selling the experience of getting people together. And then, and like you said, you had that excitement of not knowing what those pictures going to look like. And so then you got that stack of pictures and like, oh, this is cool. And everybody's sitting around in the living room and you passing those photos and you're talking about all those different, what you see on the picture. I think from that standpoint, it was amazing. And I really missed it because that was an opportunity to get everybody together. And it's not like that anymore. So in business is always, it's a common thing to say is, sell the experience. If you can provide a great experience, then you're always winning. So I think I could probably understand how they saw that as, now we're ironclad, nothing can hurt us because we have those 3 touch points and it's personal. And so, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right about that experience. That is, and I have the same memories as well as when I was a child. And you're right. How can you, we don't do that now. It's like, oh, that one didn't take. I'll delete that one. I'll just take another one, and that sort of thing. It's just instantaneous. But you're right. Yeah, I do miss that, and having that coming together piece was always really neat and really special. So,
I mean, we would go on holidays, right? And then we come back, and then our friends be like, friends or other members of the family, like, hi, how was the holiday? Oh, yeah, come along on Saturday. We have a dinner and we'll show you all the photos, right?
Yeah,
you don't have that. Everybody's just sharing. It's just, you don't get that sort of, everything's social media and everybody's just talking remotely. I mean, now everybody have to, but
right.
before.
No, you're absolutely right.
Somebody comes up with something creative and might, bring it back a little bit. That'd be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope so. It was a lot of fun.
Now, Travis, yourself, you're with what you do. You're not only you're director of at 3 Gimbal. What do you do there?
Yeah, so I'm so it's kind of funny. A lot of people say, well, tell me about yourself. It seems like that would be an easy question to answer, and it depends on where to start. So the way I like to talk about it is, yes, my title is director of growth, and that's both internal and external growth. So helping with our human capital planning, with performance planning for our staff, and helping out with some of the hiring and things like that, some of the processes and contracts and those sorts of things internally that we need to grow as a company. And then also doing some external growth, so some of the marketing and business development and those sorts of things as well. That's what my role is.
So in a way, COO?
I touch on some of those areas, but it's close to that, I would say. Yeah. Chief of staff, maybe it might be a better type of title, but yeah. And I guess the reason I shy away from that is we figure out what we call ourselves for one, but then because when I think of a COO, I think of someone who is doing, who knows the business, who's been like in our case, has been an analyst and has that experience and that sort of thing. Whereas, I don't. So I see myself more of like a chief of staff type of person. I know all the back office business stuff that needs to get done and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And then outside of that, based on all your prior experiences being a pilot, and you worked for White House at some point as well.
I did, yeah. So it was actually a great experience. I worked in the counter-narcotics field for the last half of my military career, and I had a great time doing that. That led to a role where I worked at the White House, and it's the drug policy office there. And it was great. So I did everything from, assisting law enforcement and those sorts of things when I was in the military, to running programs that did that sort of work, to doing the policy and strategy at the White House, which was obviously an amazing experience. A lot of very talented people that were there when I was there. And yeah, just had a really great time doing that. It was a great honor and a great way to cap out my career.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
What was it like to getting all the clearances? Because I mean, I would think there's bit of a process before they let you in, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so the way it worked is I already had a lot of the clearances because of my military work, but then there's still other clearances that you needed to get to go into to actually work in the White House, and all kinds of paperwork and that sort of stuff, and a lot of briefings on, you're representing the president and the vice president and that sort of thing. So, you held to this a little bit higher standard in what you say and how you act and that sort of thing. So it was really, it was really interesting. And then leaving, it's all, saying, all right, now that you're leaving, make sure you still conduct yourself accordingly and that sort of thing. So
yeah. Right. Because it's in you. It's in what you've done in the past. So
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, how do you keep fit to be able to stay sharp as a leader?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So, and so part of this pandemic piece has been that, so I was in the Army, like we've talked about, and so I didn't have a choice, right? I stayed fit because I had to. And then when I left, I was like, well, I'm kind of lazy. I really don't want to all the time and that sort of thing. So kind of packed on some pounds. And this past year, actually, I had pictures around Christmas time, and I'm like, man, I don't like that guy's face. He's kind of fat. I don't know what's going on. He's kind of puffy. Yeah. And so I made the decision, like, I need to eat better. And so I cut out a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar. And I do just a lot of walking. I've got some injuries and that sort of thing, but I did a lot of walking as well. And so I've been able to shed 20 pounds during this pandemic thing since January. So
nice work.
Pretty happy with myself about that. But it's important. I went to a course, about 2 years ago, and it was a leadership course. And they really, so not only was it the leadership fundamentals, or it's for executives, so it wasn't fundamentals, but it's like leadership principles and those sorts of things, like the things you would expect. They also spent a lot of time on nutrition and fitness and how important that was to keep your, it's one thing to keep your mind healthy and engaged and that sort of thing. But that only works if your body is healthy and working in the right ways. And especially as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I can't just get away with the stuff I used to as a kid. I need to keep an eye on it. So I think it's really important to make sure you have a healthy and fit lifestyle.
Absolutely. It'll be very interesting to look at stats and, the stats on obesity and what that looks like now during the COVID and that everybody's at home, because I would guess that it's even worse. And yeah, in the fitness industry, it's for us, it's like it's a battle that we're always constantly trying to tackle. How we can decrease the rate of obesity in the world, because there's still too many people that don't take it seriously, and there's stuff going on that doesn't help promote that. So it's so important. When you exercise, when you eat healthy, you perform better, you feel better, your brain is sharp. There's actually studies now that they say that strength training has a direct correlation to your cognitive ability. So when you stop lifting weights and you become a slob, just put it that way, become unfit, overweight, then it does affect your cognitive ability. It makes kind of sense, because your circulatory system doesn't operate as well and your heart doesn't operate as efficiently. So absolutely. For anybody listening, and this is the point I like to touch on with every single one of my guests, because I want people to share their own way to keep fit. And for yourself, it was healthy nutrition, which is always a really good way to start, especially if you're trying to lose weight, and then walking. So excellent opportunity. So, and that's an easy one, right? Walking is an easy one. So anybody else listening, you guys listening to this podcast, if you are looking at improving yourself, I mean, this whole thing has always been about inspiring success for you guys. So you've had a chance to obviously listen to Travis on his story of his career progress and where he's at right now. But he wouldn't he probably wouldn't be where he is if he didn't stay fit through training in army and all that.
You're absolutely right, Fit. And I would also say to people that say like, well, I don't have time, right? I can't fit that in. I can't get to the gym. I can't do these sorts of things. So when I served in the Obama administration, and he made time. He's the leader of the free world. He made time to go out and he would play basketball and do other things like that. And so you have time. If he has time, you have time. It's and I don't mean to be judgmental on my high horse, right? There's days I don't feel like doing it either, but it is important, and you need to make the time to do it. And it's because it's not always about you either. I have kids and my wife; they depend on me as well, so it's for them as well, and the other people that depend on you too. That it's not always just about you. It's about those around you.
Yeah, so you got to bring that higher value to it. You got to have give it more priority, because when you look at it that way, and you're exactly right. You can make time. I mean, the day has 24 hours, and if you exercise for at least 30 minutes a day, that's like 2% out of your day. It's nothing. So as long as people prioritize different things: career, work, personal time, watching movies, but I think the big one is just realizing, okay, well, long term, okay, I might go and watch Netflix, and it's a comfort thing to do and just relaxing things. That's great. But long term, is it going to serve you for better health? Probably not. Maybe a temporary fix for mental health, because you get to de-stress and switch off from work. It's good, but you can also do that with walking or exercising. And I like to think about it as a legacy thing as well, because I think if an individual exercises regularly, becomes a role model for others, right? And if you got a family, you want to be that role model for them, because then when they grow up, they're going to grow up more active, and then they're going to be better, and it can create that chain reaction in the world where we are all more active, all more fit, and much more healthier population.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's really important. Like I said, it's bigger than you, right? Or than any of us. It's those that are around you. Like you said, the legacy. I think that's really important. Absolutely.
Travis, it was great to have you on the show today. We've learned so much, and I'm going to make sure and for you guys listening as well, just so you know, the last couple of episodes, I've now incorporated a transcript. So what I do with these shows now, I do a thorough transcript, and there's a really cool thing that I found online, a keyboard extractor. So we're actually going to pull about typically around 30-40 keywords, subject matter topics that we discussed, and also you can now find timestamps. So you'll be able to, go back to a particular point of our conversation about a certain topic. You can always listen to that as well. So you can find all those little things. This is what I do. I mean, it takes me a fair bit of time to edit every episode, but it's, if it helps you guys to navigate through each episode and find what you're looking for, that's what you find. Back to you, Travis. How can people find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is probably on LinkedIn. So Travis Wright, WRIGHT on LinkedIn is a great way to find me. If you want to know more about the book, it's on Amazon. Making New Mistakes is the name of the book. And you can also check out the book websites, makingnewmistakes.info. And there's some information there about the book and some of the stories and that sort of thing. So those are the two best places to find me.
Excellent. I'll be sure to put it all in the show notes. Travis, awesome to have you on the show today. I look forward to hopefully catch up again in a few months' time and just to get a bit of an update of where you're at with your 3D printing and
yeah, absolutely.
What's the latest on the home projects? I've got some cool little home projects myself, so I'm quite excited to get them done. Awesome. All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day, mate, and let's get you on the flip side, as we like to say in Australia.